What dumb rule did you have at your school? My middle school / elementary school didn't allow locks on lockers because we were a school of trust. I'm still not over getting my gel pen stolen. We weren't allowed to wear t-shirts with Bart Simpson on them because he was glorifying being a troublemaker and underachiever. This was in the 90s. We used to have this thing called tardy tank, meaning when the final bell rang for class, teachers were instructed to lock the doors and not let anybody in. Whoever didn't make it into the room in time was sent to a detention room for tardy tank and then was released when the next bell rang. This was so counterproductive, like who the F thinks, hey, let's punish kids for being late to class by making them miss the whole class. Absolutely pathetic. The middle schools in my town banned the color red because it was associated with gangs. Every other color, including blue, was okay though. Our version of detention was called a jug, justice under God. If you were lucky, you got to do cleaning around the school and were done pretty quickly. If not, you had to sit in a classroom and write out the long subtraction math from 200 to 0, subtracting 2 and adding 1 200. 2 equals 198 plus 1 equals 199, all the way to 0. This would easily take an hour or more, and no talking was allowed. Truly terrible. Guys' hair could not touch eyebrows or collars. Girls, no pants, skirts, or dresses had to come within 2 inches of their knees when kneeling on the floor. Everyone, no jeans, shorts, or t-shirts. Yeah, I'm old as F. If you were ever in a fight and actually defended yourself, you faced the same punishment as the person who started it. I always thought it was dumb because the American legal system can set you free of charge based on self-defense, so why not the schools? Then again, the American legal system is broken. We had to clean our plate in lunch. We had to call a lunch aide over to check that we ate enough before we could go to recess. I had someone try to make me eat my green beans, and I explained they would make me throw up. She made me, and I threw up. We had to buy our uniform shirts from the school. They checked us by having giant embroidered logos on the shirts. This wouldn't be a problem if the shirts weren't such awful quality and overpriced. Eventually they started selling patches that you could put on shirts bought elsewhere, but the damage was already done for people whose parents already spent their clothes budget on the school shirts. In high school we were required to have locks on our lockers, and the office had to have a copy of the key. They would do locker checks to make sure no one left them unlocked, and one day 2 kids got into an argument because one of them stole the other's lock. It got really heated, so there was an announcement that all students had to remain in the classes we were in. My school went under lockdown because a couple of 8th graders got into an argument over a padlock. If you were late to a class, even if just by 5 seconds, you got a tardy. 5 tardies in one class over the course of 9 weeks led to a detention. If you were 10 minutes late to a class, it was an unexcused absence, and 3 of those led to a detention. The end result of these 2 rules: no one was ever 1 minute late to class. If you were running late, you would take your time, go to the bathroom, stop by your locker, have a snack, and do whatever else you needed/wanted before getting to class 9 minutes late. Avoid the unexcused absence while still counting as a tardy. I've written this before, but my high school had a stupid rule. For every minute you were late, you had to do 2 minutes of in-school detention. One day I was late 1 minute, so I had to do 2 minutes of detention. However, the school started the clock on being late at the first bell, also known as the warning bell. After first bell, students had 5 minutes to get to homeroom. The first bell rang. I walked in a minute late. I was told I had to do 2 minutes of detention. I asked when. I was told immediately. I went from the main office to the detention room next door, did my 2 minutes, and then went to homeroom. I arrived at homeroom before the late bell. When signing out of the detention room, you had to put down what you learned. I wrote down nothing. I should have written down petty tyrants don't understand the purpose of rules and how to administer them. People in grade 10 cannot walk around in groups of more than 4, as it is mob behavior. Only applied to boys. We weren't allowed to wear any bandanas of any kind. No headbands, neckerchiefs, nothing. Because bandanas were gang signs. This was in rural western New York, where the closest thing we had to a gang was a group of kids who pretended they jumped people after school, but mostly just got drunk. We had 20-minute breaks at about 10 AM and 40-minute lunch breaks at about 12 PM. On the first break you could only drink water or eat fruit. If you ate or drank anything else, detention. After school. For an hour, until they introduced 30-minute after school detentions due to parent complaints. I told this story before, but I'll retell it, because it was absolutely stupid on my HS's behalf. When I entered as a freshman, the entire school was open campus for lunch, had been that way for decades. Even my parents had open campus there. But some of the sophomores were acting up off campus, so our principal, in his infinite wisdom, decided that starting next year our high school would only be open campus for juniors and seniors. Think about this, the sophomores, the ones who were causing the trouble, but became juniors next year, therefore this new rule didn't apply to, weren't punished for what they did, but the freshmen, who then became sophomores, but weren't the ones causing the trouble, it did apply to. So I had open campus my freshman, junior, and senior year. It was closed my sophomore year. That was so damn stupid. If you were tardy to school, you got a punishment. Each time you were tardy, the punishment was as follows. First, warning. Second, warning. Third, 15-minute detention. Fourth, 30-minute detention. Fifth, 1-hour detention. Sixth, silent lunch in our OTC room. 7th, restart at 3rd and repeat. If you didn't show up for your 15-minute detention, it became 30 minutes, then an hour, then silent lunch. And here's the other kicker. No punishment at all for absences, unless you made a habit of it. What I'd do, is when I was on my 3rd tardy I'd never show up to the detention. I just let it escalate to the silent lunch, and I'd only do that when they pulled me out of the lunchroom to serve it. Why would I waste 15 minutes or an hour after school when I can serve it during school and just eat without my friends for a day? Then there were of course the times I'd be late, so I just didn't go. Did the administrators even think about this punishment escalation before they implemented it? A bunch, some of which are already posted here. If you defended yourself by retaliating in any way after being assaulted, you faced the same punishment as the assaulter. Zero tolerance policy. No red shirts on Fridays due to gang affiliation. We were middle schoolers. Had to wear student IDs at all times. If your ID was worn down or lost, you were sent to the office to purchase a new one. If you didn't have the funds, you were suspended for the rest of the day. If you were in the halls even a second after the bell rang, and one of the security guards saw you, you got a detention. No phones at all, at any time of the day. Not before class started, not in between classes, not during lunch. Your phone was to be off and inside your locker at all times. If you were caught, it was confiscated for a day 3 times, and it was confiscated for the rest of the year. This one didn't go over well. For a brief period in junior high, the school decided that the only way to solve their epidemic of students stealing lunches was to force the students who were buying lunch to sit on one side of the cafeteria and the students who brought their own lunch from home, brown baggers, to sit on the other side. Now since all my friends bought their lunch, but I brought mine, that meant I couldn't sit with any of my friends. So of course I protested, sat with them anyways, got dragged in front of the principal, passionately pleaded my case, and then a week later, that policy completely disappeared. I still don't know why they didn't at all think it was the lunch lady's responsibility to make sure students going through the line and getting food were actually paying for it though. 6th graders, and only 6th graders, were not allowed to draw anything during school at any time, any place, unless it was an actual assignment from art class. The stated reason was that they were worried about kids drawing gang signs, but this was a rural town with positively no gang activity. B. The school was grades 5 to 12, so why were 6th graders specifically the ones who were banned? And C. You don't have to be a cop to glance at a kid's drawing of a superhero or mermaid or whatever and realize it's not a gang symbol. I understand that some schools have real problems with gangs, but I think a lot of schools just use it as an excuse to not have to make judgment calls when disciplining kids. Still don't get the 6th grade thing at all. Maybe the 6th grade art teacher was worried she'd be out of a job if kids could learn to draw without her?